The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Sunny Friday here in Southern California. We have JackO coming up a little bit later to discuss the Yankees and the Red Sox. But right now on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, our favorite from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Great football game last night. Mike Lombardi, what did you think?
I thought it was outstanding. When you only get basically 9 third downs that aren't converted in the game, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
And I think the essence of the game is truly what the essence of the league is. The Saints were 1 for 5 in the red zone, didn't score, and the Packers were 4 for 4. Yards mean really nothing. The Saints had 470-some yards in only 27 minutes with the football, which is remarkable. But it comes down to they couldn't convert a key 4th and 1. They couldn't convert a key 4th and 1 in the red zone, and it just kills them.
Let's talk about the first thing I want to try to figure out is what we can take away from that game with what the rest of these Week 1 games. And a couple things that I noticed, and I don't know if it was just those two teams or if it's something we're going to see for the rest of Week 1. First, the defenses both look like they got tired as that game got along. Are these defenses in shape?
No question they get tired. And here's the thing you have to understand about whether it's the lockout or no lockout. All defenses get tired when you play so much man-to-man coverage because the corners and the safeties, they get tired of running. The receivers can get a break. It's like lining up, and when you're playing the Colts, you're going to play all man against Peyton Manning. By the fourth quarter, you're dead. You have nothing left in the tank. So there's no question, I think your continuity column today brings to light exactly why we saw so many points scored last night, because the offensive lines on both sides of the ball, with the exception of the right tackle for the Saints, had played pretty much together for the last couple of seasons, so they could make line calls. They've seen blitzes before. It was a comfortable environment, and the checks that they were making weren't strange to them, weren't foreign, the words they were calling, so the protections didn't really break down for the most part, and I think ultimately that's why you saw so many points scored.
And it seemed like Green Bay's defensive line wore down in the second half. It just seems like you're going to get more tired on the defensive side of the ball, and these guys have only been practicing for 6-7 weeks, right?
No question. And then what happens, you get a kickoff return, you really don't get any rest.
Right.
You get a kickoff
and
return
also,
for touchdown.
Special teams, we saw 2 special teams touchdowns. Then we saw 2 more almost special teams touchdowns. Is that just a case of practice time, or are Cobb and Sproles that good?
Well, they're good, but it's practice time, too. You don't get a chance to simulate it with the new practice rules. Week 1 is always a special teams alert week in the NFL. I think this week we'll see an onside kick. I think we'll see more of those returns because you can't simulate the speed of the returns in practice. You can't simulate the way the returners run the ball in the preseason, so it becomes a lot different. Plus, teams are learning about their personnel on the punt team, right, the kickoff return team, and the kickoff team. So it's an evolution that I think is going to take some time, and that's why you see it early in the season. They can shift the balance of power.
All right, so my 2 takeaways, other than I felt the continuity thing was going to be a huge thing. That's why I wrote my whole column about it this week. But special teams, I think, I went from thinking special teams aren't really going to be a factor anymore because these new kickoff rules to thinking, wow, these first couple of weeks special teams are going to be a real factor, especially with what you mentioned, the turnover in the rosters. It almost seems like those special teams on both sides were kind of thrown together. And then both teams being in shape, it makes me wonder, or not being in shape, it makes me wonder, like this weekend, are the teams that throw the ball out, like Pittsburgh, New England, San Diego, are those teams going to have an enormous advantage this particular weekend?
Well, they're going to have an advantage because if they're used to running and playing in the heat and humidity, it's going to certainly affect them. And if you don't have enough defensive linemen on your roster, you should always carry extra defensive linemen in September because you've got to dress them for the game and keep them fresh for the fourth quarter. If you're light in the defensive line and you don't have enough of those guys, you're going to wilt in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line, when it matters the most. So the teams that throw the ball have a way to wear you out. You'll see no huddle. I think that's why the Packers went no huddle early in the game. They knew they needed to establish the lead in that game. They knew they needed to get ahead of them. They knew they wanted to tire out the Saints. They're missing a defensive lineman, Will Smith, so they needed to kind of tire them out, and then they gain the advantage. It's like whenever you play against a great defensive line, once you can tire them out a little bit, all of a sudden they're trying to catch their breath instead of rushing the passer. So I think you'll see more of that, especially with the teams that can throw the football effectively. I wouldn't be surprised if all those teams you mentioned didn't go into some form of no huddle.
Second big thing I noticed yesterday, just quickly, the kickoff. For some reason, it didn't dawn on me until last night. Now kicking off at the 35, do you think we'll see more onside kicks this year? Because even if they get it, they're getting it basically at midfield.
I think so. I mean, it's like in the Arena League game. I do some of those games on NFL Network, and I often wonder why they don't onside kick every one, because in the Arena League, field position doesn't matter. And when you're playing against Aaron Rodgers, does field position really matter? I mean, okay, start him at his own 10, and next thing you know, he's at the midfield. And you want to gain a possession somewhere. And I'm not saying you do it all the time, but I think the key element of playing a great quarterback, you're going to get 12 possessions in a game. You got to try to find a way to gain a possession from him. And last night the Saints were having a hard time gaining possessions. They had, I think in the first half they had 1 3 and out, and pretty much all the other times the Packers went up and down the field. So you got to find a way to gain a possession.
I thought this going into the season. I wrote it yesterday. I felt like it was confirmed last night. The Packers are more explosive than they were last year. I think 3 big things. Finley coming back, which we all knew was going to be a factor. Jordy Nelson, just kept it going from what happened in the playoffs last year. And then this Cobb, having him as basically your 5th receiver, they seem more frightening to me. Now, it might have just been opening night. The Saints were, Will Smith wasn't there. They hadn't practiced a ton yet. But am I crazy, or is it a mortal lock that this offense is going to be better than last year?
Well, I think where they were even better than before was last night on the offensive line. Their pad level was really good. They were blowing Sean Rogers off the ball. Cedric Ellis was getting turned around. You didn't hear Abreu Franklin's name mentioned. I thought their run block and their pad level was incredible, and that just allows the receivers to really get open. And I think that the Randall Cobb player is the joker player. He's their Darren Sproles. He's the guy that I think you're going to see packages develop as the year goes along within the Packer framework of their offense, that to get him the football, because he's so good with the ball with yards after the catch. So, yeah, I think they can be extremely deadly. They can be better than they were last year. I'm not sure, you can go in there and not, if you don't reroute those receivers at the line of scrimmage like the Saints weren't doing, you're going to be in for a long day.
The 2 biggest plays of the game, I texted you after it happened, the 4th and short, they did the predictable play action and got stuffed, and then at the end of the game, obviously not being able to score a touchdown on the last play. Should I take away from that the Saints can't run for 1 yard when they need it, or should I take away from that the Packers, their front 4, is so good that you're just going to have to find another way to beat them in 4th and short?
Well, on that night, the Packers front 4 was better than the Saints O-line. There's no question. I think the play that the Saints called on the 4th and 1 was a typical what they call spider play, which is fullback in the flat, try to create a play-action pass, put the ball in Breeze's hands. But, obviously the Packers were well coached. They were ready for that. The 4th down call, to me, at the end of the game, I think what happened there was they used their 2-point play on the touchdown to Jimmy Graham. That great fake and the great bubble fake screen of Ray, and all of a sudden throw it to the flat. That looked like their 2-point play, and I think they might have run out of a 2-point play, and I think they were so close, they felt like there's no way. And what happened, by not having a timeout, by not having the ability really to get, and I've got to look at the tape today to see what the play clock was down to, but I think had they had to do it again, I think they would have checked out of the play and gotten into something else. Typically, Sean Peyton never gives Drew Brees 1 play to run. Drew Brees should always have 3 plays to run. And I think what happened, the play clock got down on him on that time, and he ended up running a play that he knew as soon as he handed the ball off was the wrong call.
I picked the Steelers to beat the Packers in the Super Bowl, and you never want to get carried away with Week 1, one way or the other. But, man, it's going to be hard to imagine anybody outgunning that team like that. I think the way to beat them, we were talking about this last night, almost seems like you got to use the Super Bowl 42 Giants blueprint. Ball control, run, keep their offense off the field, shorten the game. Isn't that the blueprint, or am I nuts?
Well, you got to play good in the red area. I mean, look, they're going to get the ball down in the red area. It's like when you played Peyton and Tom Brady, those guys. You've got to keep them to kick field goals and not touchdowns. And you've got to be able, and the Saints did a horrible job at that. They were slipping and sliding on that field. Looked like they brought the wrong shoes with them. And when they got down to the red area, they were just not effective. They had a couple third downs in the red area, and they converted third downs in the red area. And to me, if you're going to beat a great passer, you got to do it with your defensive front. You got to control them in the pocket, which Aaron Rodgers was really too comfortable in the pocket. And then you got to play great in the red zone. It comes down to yards are meaningless because at the end of the day, what happens in the red zone is going to determine your fate, and you got to be good down there. And if you're not, your game gets away from you like it did last night.
What do we make of the Saints? Colston looks banged up for the 19th straight year. Sproles definitely an upgrade from Reggie Bush. I don't know if ultimately that takes them anywhere. Mark Ingram looked fine. He wasn't great. Their defense just didn't look that good, but we don't know how much of the Packers were, that was responsible. But I really like the Bucs this year. I'm in the minority, and everybody likes the Falcons. Is it possible the Saints fall out of the picture here?
I don't think so because the quarterback's so good, but I would be concerned about their receivers. I saw Colston as kind of a journeyman guy out. I didn't see any spark or explosion with him. And Devery Henderson gives them some life, and he gives them a big play. I think they really miss Lance Moore in the slot. That quick player, he didn't dress in the game, but I think they're going to start going through some receivers here. I think Jimmy Graham gives them a certain element, much like Finley gives the Packers. Defensively, it's going to be battleship football all the way for the Saints. And battleship football, by that I mean, they're going to call a defense. If it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. K5 hit, G3 miss. Okay, let's try G7. Something else, because that's what it looked like. To me, last night, the Saints had no foundation to fall back to. When you're getting the ball moved on you at that rate that the Packers were, you have to have a defense that you can call, that you play really well, that keeps the ball in front of you and makes them work it down the field, whether it's a cover 2, whether it's a cover 3, whatever it is. And last night, to me, the Saints didn't have that. They played too much battleship football, and I think it affected them. And now, when you play battleship football, some weeks you can shut an opponent out because you hit it right. But some weeks against good quarterbacks, it's going to be long. I would be concerned if I'm a Saint fan about the corner's ability to cover, about my defense being able to be within sync with the offense, and about my receivers.
Let's move to Manning quickly. Everybody's been talking about it, obviously, but we talked a few weeks ago. You were one of the few people I heard say on a radio show, TV show, whatever, podcast, that you were really dubious that Manning was coming back and that you had seen him and he didn't seem 100% healthy. The Kerry Collins signing was another red flag. Is it possible they knew for the last few weeks that this guy almost definitely wasn't coming back and they basically hit it? Or how do you think this played out over the last 4 weeks?
Oh, I think they've known clearly for a month that the opening game was out of the question, because ultimately what happens was Peyton couldn't do any rehab with any significant strength. I mentioned this too on the podcast. There was a time in June where lifting 5 pounds for Peyton with an arm curl was difficult. So the Colts clearly knew that this wasn't going well, and Peyton was touring the country looking for second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions, trying to find out why the muscle wasn't regenerating itself, why he wasn't feeling better from the surgery. So this has been a concern all along, and everybody has recommended this procedure. Now, where this procedure leads us, I've had somebody tweet me last night. If he was a fighter pilot, he would have not been allowed in the plane again. There's all sorts of different things based on people's perception of this injury. And again, nobody really knows exactly what was done. They've given us a broad spectrum of the procedure, but the reality is nobody really knows where he is. I think what you said in your piece is right. I think, to me, if I'm the Colts, I want them to get healthy, and let's talk about 2012. Let's not talk about putting together 2011, because I think it'll give the Colts a real reality of who they are as a football team if they watch this team play for 6 weeks without Peyton Manning.
All right, I'm thinking about this from an NBA standpoint. In the NBA, you just shut them down like the Spurs did with David Robinson. You tank the season. You would not want him to come back, especially if he's not coming back for the first 8 to 10, 11 weeks. I can't for the life of me figure why they would bring him back. Like, at that point, what are they going to be, 2-6? They don't have enough talent to survive 2.5 months without Manning. So if this were the NBA, not only would you shelve him for the year, but maybe you would trade 1 or 2 of your guys and really try to reload, rebuild? Does it work that way in the NFL?
No, because I think what happens is, who would the Colts have available to trade? Freeney?
Reggie Wayne.
That would be the only asset you have. And when Manning comes back, what are you going to do? Draft a receiver? Now you're starting back over again.
Reggie Wayne's what, 33, 34 now? Like, I watched the Saints last night, and I'm thinking, like, if you're the Saints, would you give up a number 1 pick for Reggie Wayne right now?
Well, they gave up a 1 for Ingram, and I certainly would give up a 1 for Wayne. There's no question I would do that. I think it'll be difficult for the Colts to admit that. Part of this is you got to admit where you are as a football team. Wayne, how many assets? When you use the basketball analogy, and every term I hear from basketball people is, how many assets do you have? How many real assets do the Colts have? Wayne wants another contract, so if you ship him off to New Orleans for that one, New Orleans better be prepared to give him another contract, or else Reggie Wayne might not show up. You ship Robert Mathis to another team, he might not show up.
I had something wrong. You had Mathis as a red chip. I listed your column yesterday. You had the Colts with 4 blue chippers and 0 red chippers. You had Mathis as a red chip, which I just didn't see when I was looking at it. But now with Manning out, so you did this list of blue chips, red chips, which I encourage everybody to read. I think it was something like 135 players. With Manning not in the season now, the Colts had 4 guys in that list total. And you look at what happened to them, their last 5 first-round picks. Now, the Colts fans would argue Joseph Adai wasn't a whiff. I say at any point in Joseph Adai's career, was he one of the top 15 running backs in the league? No. Maybe he wasn't a full-fledged whiff, but he was definitely a weak rounder to second. Tony Hugo was a whiff. The Jerry Hughes was a whiff. Anthony Gonzalez,
how do you categorize in that?
Donald Brown, whiff. This is a team that's basically whiffed on 5 straight first-round picks, and now Manning's out. Why isn't this the worst team in the league?
I think it is. I think it is without Manning. I've said it before. That's why they look so bad the preseason. And what happens is, even the players that we think are good, when Manning's not in there, are going to be exposed as not so good. It's the Michael Jordan theory. Yeah, Scotty Williams looks great playing with him, and sure, the 76ers will give him $4 billion to come over here, but they didn't bring Jordan with them.
Right. That's a good point. There's going to be a couple guys who get exposed. Dallas Clark might not be the same guy without Manning.
He's going to have a difficult time because he's never going to be running the perfect play against the perfect defense. Don't lose sight of that. Manning's the offensive coordinator, so when he calls a play, typically he knows exactly what he's getting, and he's putting you in the perfect place to succeed. So I think the Michael Jordan theory holds up here. There's a lot of players on that team that become, say they're graded a 5'8", 5'9". Manning made him a 6'2", 6'3". There's a value that he brings to the table that's tough to replace.
And also, like, when you think of everything he did for that team, Kerry Collins has been on the Colts for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? And now he's going to be the guy who is audibling at the line and stuff. I just don't see it. Like, man, I don't know why they would bring him back.
They're going to have to run off. It's called welcome to the NFL. It's life without a quarterback. When they drive to the stadium Sunday morning, as the executives in that, Bill Poley and his son Chris, it's going to, now for the first time in a long time, you're going to find out what life's like without a quarterback. It's tough, and they have no. What I said about Greg Williams. What area of extra strength are you using on defense? Where is the Colts' strength? Where are their assets? Well, their number one assets are pass rushers with Mathis and Freeney, outstanding assets. But if you never get the lead and you're never in a position to rush the passer, you don't even have assets with them.
That's a good point. I didn't even think of that. Wow. This could be
everybody throws the ball down the field. Everybody in the league has a coach up in the box that when Freeney comes out of the game, we're going to take our shot down the field. Yeah. Freeney's out, take the shot. Now, you don't have to worry about Freeney being out to take the shot because you can double. The game's never going to get away from you. You think, can the Colts generate 17 points with that offense? I don't think so.
See it. Well, and also, didn't Tom Moore left, right? He switched.
Tom Moore's gone. It's a whole new. Norv Turner's brother, Ron Turner's there. Clyde Christensen's there. Pete Metzelar's the offensive line coach. This is a completely different enterprise. A new offensive line being put into place. So there's a lot of things that are not really that truly this is what happens. I think you wrote about it. When you have the great player retires, typically the team goes in the hole because you always what I found in the NFL is you always misevaluate the player playing behind the great player because he never plays.
Yeah, well, and also the players that he's playing with. And we haven't even mentioned Jim Caldwell yet, who you and I are not really on the Jim Caldwell bandwagon, to say the least.
Well, I think he has to redefine his team in less than a week.
Yeah.
What I would have done if I were him is, if I know Manning's not playing, then I'm going to play some of these guys in the preseason. I'm going to take a different approach in preseason because we're going to have to be a different team. We're going to have to slow the game down. We're going to have to hope we can win games 17-14. We're going to have to hope we can win games. We're going to have to play a different kind of game.
Well, I do wonder, remember when, I think 3 years ago, he had the knee surgery, then he had the second knee surgery that nobody knew about. And they thought, oh, he's not going to play the first 4 weeks. He gutted it out. He was there week 1. He basically limped around and healed his knee as he was playing the season. And it almost seemed like they gave everybody in the Colts a false sense of confidence. Like, yeah, Manning's neck's not right, but, he's a gamer. He doesn't miss games. He'll be there. And then all of a sudden, no, 2 weeks before the season starts, they're signing Kerry Collins. I would shut it down. I just don't see the value in it. I don't think... They're not going to win the Super Bowl with the team they have with a healthy Manning. So to not have him for 10 weeks, what's the point? Why even risk? Why have him rush his comeback? Why are you messing around with this? You might be able to get 5-6 years out of this guy.
You got a huge investment in him. You better make sure you protect your investment. And look, Kerry Collins came back for, if they would have offered Kerry Collins $1 million, he probably wouldn't have come back. But for $4 million, it was, I'll give up writing songs and I'll give up this cattle and I'll come in. But Kerry Collins at 38 years old, he was getting hurt in pregame warmup. But we don't understand when guys get older. And I think Favre kind of put a little bit of a damper on this because he was able to play so good 2 years ago at his age. But typically quarterbacks, when they get up there in age, it's very difficult to come back from a calf injury or to come back from an injury that you don't even sustain in a game. You just sustain getting out of bed because of age and your body's wearing down. This is really a risky proposition. The Colts expressed no interest in David Garrard, but what happens if Kerry Collins, Kerry Collins isn't going to play this entire season. I don't want to jinx him, but he's not going to play, so they're going to have to get somebody else in there. It's going to be Curtis Painter.
Oh. Well, and then also, am I the only one who remembers that Kerry Collins was terrible last year?
Yeah,
how does that fact get swept under the rug? He was sucked last year.
It's unbelievable, and it's really remarkable how people have short memories about the season last year. It's like I'm catching so much crap for my Redskins pick, and really nobody remembers it. They were in 9 games last year that they could have easily won. They lost by 3 points or less. They were 3-1 in overtime games. Really, when you break down the Redskins, as bad as they were defensively, and they were atrocious last year, they were in every game. They had a couple duds, but for the most part, they're in every game. They're 4-4 on the road. They're 2-6 at home. They beat the Packers at home. They go to Chicago and beat the Bears, and they go to they went to Chicago. They won in Chicago, and they won somewhere else. Another team that was a playoff team, and they won.
They won in Philly.
They won. They beat Philly. They won at home. They won in Philly. That's right. They won in Philly, and they lost to the Eagles at home.
Well, it's emotional because you and I are we were embarking on a long car ride. It's going to last about 5 months. It's a bandwagon. It's got the Tennessee Titans logo on the side. We're alternating driving. I drive a little bit. You're in the passenger seat. We pull over, be like, hey, I'll drive for a few hours. All right. And it's really just the two of us right now, and maybe 3 Titans fans. I've been on this for a couple weeks. I think they win the AFC South.
Well, let me give you some more arsenal. How many points do you think the Texans averaged offensively last year? The great Texans offense, which is very good.
Yeah, how many?
24. How many do you think the Titans averaged?
I don't know.
22.
Yeah. And they have a better running back.
You would think that would be 24-17, right?
Yeah.
You'd think there would be a huge... Now, we know the Titans defensively weren't very good last year, but they should be much better. So, they add players. I think they've got some really good offensive line. Look, it's going to play out. Like you said, we've got 5 months to see it go. What would happen if Houston lost to Indianapolis this week?
Oh, my God. If they can't beat Indianapolis by 10 points this week, then I don't see why anybody would still be believing them. What I don't understand is this. It's so allegedly crazy to pick Tennessee to win the AFC South. When they won 6 games last year, they averaged, as you said, within 2 points of what Houston averaged. They had the Jeff Fisher, Vince Young combo thing. Could that have been like more of a chemistry killer, buzzkill? Like, that just couldn't have been worse. Now it's a better situation. Then you look at Houston. Houston was 2-8 in their last 10 games. I tell that stat to anybody who says, "Oh, I like the Texans this year," and they're like kind of dumbfounded. Like, really? They were 2-8 last 10 games? Like, where were you people? This team stunk last year. I don't understand what's different about them. Congratulations. You signed a free agent cornerback, and you added a guy in the defense. Like, it's the same team I watched last year that wasn't good.
That's older. That's really searching for a third receiver. And, look, I'm not anti-Texans. I just watch them play. And, look, they're 24th in the league in first quarter points. They're supposed to be the most explosive. You think the Packers are going to finish 24th in the league in first quarter points?
Right.
I'm
not saying they don't have a chance.
Before most of the West Coast got home.
I'm not saying they don't have a chance. Obviously, it's going to be them or Tennessee in this division. But I think it's 50-50. And if anything, I'd rather bet on Tennessee and them being the nobody believed in us team than Houston, which for like the 4th straight year just has everybody just blowing smoke up their butts and expecting them to be good. And I think this Colts game in Week 1 is going to be a little counterproductive for them because they'll probably win 38-13. Everybody will have their chest puffed out afterwards. Yeah, here we come. AFC South's going to be ours. And then the real season's going to start and it's like, oh yeah, well you're not going to have to play against Kerry Collins every time. So before we let you go, anything you want to watch out for this week? What's the thing you're most fascinated to see develop on Sunday?
Well, I think injuries are going to be a real factor on Sunday. I really do. I think there's going to be injuries are going to take a toll on the team, and I think there's certain teams that are so delicate in terms of if they lose just 1 or 2 guys could really ruin their season. And that's the other equation we haven't really talked about. If any team, look, let's face it, if the Titans lose Matt Hasselbeck, I'm off the bandwagon. You're driving alone.
Me too. But I'm going to get out too, and we're just going to set it on fire and run in the other direction.
So, there's just so many players that are it swings the balance of power for so many teams that I'm going to be fascinated to watch. And I'm really going to be interested to see the teams that didn't fix their quarterback. If Alex Smith plays well against Seattle, is that going to make you feel better? Or if Tavares Jackson plays better against San Francisco, is that going to make you feel better?
The one team that could really get some momentum this week is the Browns. They should if they're a potential playoff team, they should kill the Cincinnati this weekend. I think. But that's you got a rookie quarterback coming in. They should just beat them up.
Well, the thing about Cincinnati is I don't know if Cincinnati can score any point. Cincinnati's going to always have to play perfect defense because the offense isn't going to score a lot of points. And when you have to play perfect defense, you're in so many 1-0 baseball games that eventually, you give up a seeing eye hit and all of a sudden you lose the game and it becomes very difficult. So I like Cincinnati's defense. I just think if they had a quarterback, if they had David Garrard, let's say, I think they'd be a much better team.
And the other one, I really want to see how Tampa responds to everybody just saying that they're going to stink again, and to everybody blowing smoke up Detroit, and that they're the sleeper, and here they come, and Matthew Stafford, and now they're going into Tampa, and I would expect Tampa to respond in the way that I think they can respond this week.
Well, it'll be interesting. I think this is a game you've got to watch the 4th quarter, and because the heat and humidity could wilt the defensive line. And once Detroit loses their defensive line, then all of a sudden Josh Friedman can start making plays. So I don't care what the score is in this game. Say it's 24-10 and going into the 3rd at halftime, or this can easily turn around quickly because if the players lose their endurance and lose their conditioning in the 4th quarter for Detroit, then they can certainly give up the lead. It'll be, to me. I'm going to take the other aspect. How Detroit handles. Now, they've had really no success, and I like Detroit, but it's going to be how they play going into Week 1. They've patted themselves on the back in the preseason. Are they going to take this as typically when a team plays well in the preseason, they're always a dud in the opening game, and Detroit needs to avoid that.
Yeah, and the one thing is, if Detroit shows me in Week 1, if Detroit goes into Tampa and beats them up and wins that game and has the kind of swagger they had in that Pats preseason game, I'll switch my opinion. I'll ride them the rest of the way. I think the worst thing you could do when you're picking games and things like that is to just kind of hold on to something that's not true. That's the game that could swing me either way on both teams out of all the ones. The other one, I do want to see San Diego beat up Minnesota. Like, if you're really going to finish 13-3 and Phil Rivers is going to win the MVP, all that narrative that people like myself have been writing, take care of business against Donovan McNabb. No Williams. He can't play this week because of the StarCaps thing. That should be a team they beat up at home, right?
Right, no question. And I think the other team that's going to be fascinating to see is everybody thinks this Pittsburgh-Baltimore game is going to be a slugfest, which I'm sure it will be. But it's going to be fascinating to see where Baltimore is offensively because they have not looked good all summer.
All right, Mike Lombardi. Hey, I got a great email, by the way, about you that they were saying that, you know how we call like a nurse, if it's a male nurse, you call them a male nurse instead of just a nurse? Yeah. They were saying that NFL Network should do that when you're a sideline reporter. They should do let's go to our male sideline reporter, Mike Lombardi. I liked it. I thought it was a good idea. What do you think?
Hey, I'm all for it. I'll take it.
Are you going to location this week?
It's better than what I've been called on Twitter by half the Texans fans.
Oh, man. Don't let. The Houston people are crazy. Are you going to a game this week, or are you going to be in the...
No, I'm sitting here at NFL Films. I got to do game day morning from NFL Films, and I'm going to go into the studio and just watch all the games, so I'm excited.
Beautiful. All right, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Mike Lombardi, thank you for coming on. All right, and a little bit earlier, not from the 7:10 a.m. studio, but from my house, we called JackO at work, my diehard Yankee fan friend, and here's how that played out.
Complex Litigation, this is John.
Johnny.
What's up, buddy?
I don't know.
No Johnny?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Andrew Miller has taken your soul and spirit away from you?
Pretty much.
Oh, my goodness. This is disappointing.
Josh Beckett sprained ankle. Eric Bernard feels good, but not quite good enough to pitch.
Yeah.
John Lackey.
Yeah.
It's been a tough month, Johnny.
It has been.
You know what stinks is that you can't, if you're a Red Sox fan, you can't even complain because then, like, when I tweet on Twitter that I'm upset with how a game went, then people respond that I'm a jerk and we won 2 titles and I should shut up. So what am I supposed to do? Just not have emotion anymore?
No, I think you're still entitled. I mean,
Thank you.
You're getting close to that 5-year window since your last championship. I guess then you're free to vent again, right? But I think you can always vent about your team. I don't buy this philosophy that if your team won a year ago or whatever that you're not allowed to say anything. I don't buy that.
Yeah, it was the 5-year grace period was something that I came up with when none of the Boston teams had won for like 15 years.
Right.
It's a little different after you won because part of following sports is the ups and downs of following a team. And also, like, regardless of whether we won or lost, I just want to beat the Yankees every year. That's really all I care about.
Yeah.
I want to do better than them. I want to finish better than them. I want to have Game 7 at home against them in a series, and et cetera, et cetera. So,
well, see, you're one of the rarities because it's been interesting for me as a Red Sox hater to watch from afar. And before the season started, it was that the Red Sox were the 2011 version of the 27 Yankees, and you were going to win 100 games for the first time since 1946 or whenever the last time was that they won 100 games, and this amazing juggernaut that was going to just roll through the American League and onto the World Series. And now it's like, well, if we make the wild card, that's fine, just to get in the playoffs. Winning the division doesn't matter. I don't know what happened to the 27 Yankees. I don't think the 27 Yankees backed into the playoffs.
The 2-10 start didn't help.
I realized that you stumbled out of the gate, but then, I mean, you caught fire. You were playing great. I mean, it's been a huge roller coaster season for the Red Sox, no question. But I'm just amazed by their fans. Oh well, if we make the wild card, that's fine. And of course, like Yankee fans who always talk about the championships of the past, that's all Red Sox fans talk about now is 2004. Well, we were the wild card in 2004. Give me a freaking break. It makes me laugh.
I don't like any of your comments right now.
Sorry.
You've become a Red Sox fan agitator on Twitter, and I don't appreciate it for 1 second.
I know. Between the past couple of days, between tweets about the Red Sox and tweets about politics, I've really gotten a lot of vitriolic responses. All in good
politics
fun.
is going to do that for you, one way or the other. Yeah, I'm looking at the standings right now, and kind of an underrated story of the AL East right now. Tampa Bay is only 6 games behind Boston.
Yeah, 6.5, I think, as of today.
Well, in the loss column, it's 6.
Oh, okay.
7 in the win column. But
okay.
And they're not going to catch them because it's too late in September. But You think like how Tampa played out this season. I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. I exchanged some emails with Jonah Carey about Desmond Jennings.
Right.
Tampa wasn't that far away from really having an impact on this season, especially because they have a bunch of games in September against both of these teams, which they've played a few of them already. But when you think like what they got from James Shields, David Price, Casey Kochman, another good Ben Zobrist, things like that. If they had brought up Jennings about 4 months earlier, I think he would have swung maybe 3 games, and then they're right there. So we kind of dodged the bullet.
Let me just say that I'm married and I just had a child, so getting married was a happy day. Having the birth of my child was a happy day in my life. If the Red Sox ever were to choke and not make the playoffs this year, I might have to readjust the rankings for the happiest days in my life. That would make me so giddy and happy. I don't even know what I would do with myself. I think I would stay home from work for like a week and just read the Boston Globe website 24 hours a day. Just the comments and everything, it would be so fantastic.
Well, here's the thing, Johnny. We're playing 3 games at Tampa.
I know.
Right now. And at the end of these 3 games, they could be 3. If Tampa swept the Red Sox, which is possible because the matchups are Lackey is pitching tonight against Davis.
Nice.
Then tomorrow it's Stone Temple Pilots singer Scott Weiland is pitching against Jeremy Hellickson.
Nice.
Pretty sure we're going to lose that one. And then John Lester against James Shields, which should be a bloodbath on Sunday. That'll be
big
a nice
game,
one.
James. Let's see if he lives up to his name.
So if Tampa wins these first 2, all of a sudden they're 4 back in the loss column. And then Lester versus Shields on Sunday. Now, from there, the Red Sox they're playing against Toronto Tuesday and Wednesday. Toronto, a team that has just given the Red Sox all kinds of trouble. And the 2 pitchers we'll be throwing out for that series, Johnny?
Yeah.
Mr. Tim Wakefield and Mr. Andrew Miller. Then Tampa comes to town for 4 to Boston. Our stopper for that first game after the Tim Wakefield Andrew Miller disaster.
Yeah.
The one, the only John Lackey.
Oh, baby.
I mean, this is really bad, Johnny.
Oh, that would be so good.
So we have 7 games against Tampa. 7 of the next 9 games are against Tampa, and we're only 6 ahead of them in the loss column. And the only good pitcher we have going in those first 8 games is John Lester. It's
a lot of pressure on old Johnny Lester to win games there.
It's not good. You got to be feeling pretty confident right now.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Yankees have a ridiculously tough schedule. The September West Coast road trip. And they face Bartolo Colon, who the bloom is off of, facing Jared Weaver tonight. And they've stumbled 2 games in a row now against the Orioles, just looking completely inept. And yesterday on the radio is not a good sign. I was at work and I was listening to the game on the radio, and Sterling and Susan Waldman were talking about how tired the Yankees are because they started the game the other night at 11 o'clock, and they've had weather issues and a lot of games with no off days. And it's never good to hear about the team's really dragging right now. And they struck out some ridiculous amount of times yesterday, and they were saying on the radio, well, they're striking out because they're a little step slow because they're so tired. And it's not good to be tired and then take a 6-hour flight to the West Coast.
Well,
and the Angels are fighting for a playoff spot, so they're not going to roll over.
I think it's tough for the Yankees because you have to time your steroids and HGH cycles for the playoffs. So this is usually where it dips because you got to wean yourself off, and then you come back on and you get more strength in October.
Right. There's probably delivery issues because of the hurricane and the rain and everything too. Yeah, that's a factor.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think of that. Stuff that wasn't coming out of Latin America like as fast as normal. Yeah,
right.
Colon's ERA.
Next thing, the Yankees will be spraining their ankle with no visible tripping or falling on the mound. The mysterious ankle injuries that just happen.
Oh, come on, Johnny.
Has anybody in the history of mankind ever sprained their ankle, ended up with something that's being diagnosed as an ankle sprain without visibly falling off the mound or tripping? He looks completely fine, and then he talks about his bone in his ankle feeling like it was coming out of the socket.
It's a little weird. Well,
I mean, in basketball, when a guy sprains his ankle, there's always a horrific video where the guy's foot lands on another guy's foot and his ankle rolls over, and everybody at home grabs their ankle and cringes. Nothing like that happened with him.
Seems like it was like a ligament thing more than anything. Let me read you hitters against Bartolo Colon by the month.
Yes.
Their average in April, 237. In May, 232. In June, a sterling 186.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden that started to rise. In July, 307.
Yeah.
August, 284. September, 280. Is he going to start a playoff game for you?
It's an excellent question. I mean, the only sure thing is Sabathia. And then it was presumed that Ivan Nova would be the number 2 starter with his 15 wins. But he was terrible yesterday against the lowly Orioles. The bloom is off the rose for Freddie Garcia as well.
It sure
A.J.
is.
Burnett is A.J. Burnett. And Phil Hughes hasn't exactly been setting the world on fire. And Bartolo is coming back to Earth like a satellite crashing back to Earth from outer space.
A big fat one.
I don't know. I mean, they have 6 guys to they have Sabathia, and then they got 5 other guys to choose from to make 3 starts. And I don't know who's in the mix right now.
We traded Ivan Nova. Ivan Nova. We traded him right near the deadline in the League of Dorks. He'd just been called back up from AAA. He'd been in AAA for a month. Somebody offered us Dylan Patances for him.
Nice.
The Yankees,
young
guy. Really
great hope, sure.
Nova's $7. He's going to get wins. That's really about it. We traded him, and he immediately just went on a tear. So I was very excited that it finally ended last night because I never thought he could get guys out. Strike guys out. He was one of those guys, the ball was in play, and you kind of hope people caught it. And he started striking guys out. It got me a little worried, but I think last night maybe he finally crashed back to earth a tiny bit. But
yeah, they said he basically had nothing yesterday. His curveball had no bite. He had no command. He was all over the place. I didn't see any of the game because I was working, but I was listening on the radio.
So you have the ALDS.
Yeah.
Sabathia starts game 1. Who is your game 2 starter?
I think they'd go with Nova.
Wow. I think they would too.
Yeah, I think he's their number 2 guy.
Yeah, no Phil Hughes?
And the problem is if the Yankees win the division and they're playing Detroit and they're going to face Verlander in game 1.
Yeah, that's
Verlander's probably going to win that game. I mean, you hope that Sabathia can keep him close and they get into the bullpens, but if Verlander wins that game, you got a lot of pressure on Nova in game 2. A lot of pressure.
The other
you can't go down 0-2 in a 5-game series.
Also seems like Miggy Cabrera is getting a little something going.
Yeah, he's been hot lately.
Yeah, we don't want Miggy to be getting hot right around now. I kind of hope this plays out with you win the division and you have to play Detroit, and then we get Texas.
That's no prize for you either, though.
Not a prize for us, but I just don't want to face Verlander. But not with the team that we have right now.
I mean, when they get to the postseason, the thing is, when you get to the postseason one, it's such a coin flip. I remember 2005 when every Yankee fan was so excited that they weren't going to have to face the Angels in the first round. They could play the Tigers. Yeah. And then the Tigers just absolutely embarrassed them, and there was talks that Joe Torre was going to be fired, and it was a year after 2004, and it was just an enormous disaster. So you can never really wish to wish to play somebody. I mean, you're going to win a World Series, you're going to have to play good teams. The thing that worries me from a Yankee perspective is they've been hot lately, minus the last 2 games, but they've been hot and they've been playing well, but they've been playing awful teams with awful pitching, and the offense has been on fire and scoring a lot of runs. You're not going to face awful pitchers in the postseason. So, they've had some 11 to 10 wins and scored a lot of runs, and their pitchers, guys like Nova, have looked good except for yesterday. But, again, you're facing bad lineups. I mean, the Orioles are a glorified AAA team at this point.
It's pretty bad.
And it just worries me when they get to the playoffs and you're facing the quality of pitching like a Verlander or a, C.J. Wilson for Texas or whomever. I don't know if the bats are going to come through like they have been against, late September call-ups or guys that don't belong in the majors, It's troubling. It's trouble all around. It's trouble for both teams, I guess, and for everybody.
I think Detroit's a worse draw in round 1, though, because...
Yeah, you get Verlander twice, or maybe 3 times, I guess.
Yeah, but if you play Detroit in the second round, he might have pitched 3 times in the ALDS, so you only get him twice in the ALCS.
True, that's true.
But in the ALDS, you're definitely getting him 3 times.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. He's thrown a lot of innings this year. It's another thing that he'll probably be over 250 innings by the end of the year. And then the way these baseball playoffs are set up, if he started 3 times in the ALDS, 2 times in the ALCS, 3 times, he might have 8 more starts here in October. He'd be over 300 innings by the end of the year. Like, you could potentially really burn this guy out. If I were them, how many games are they up now?
They're up a lot, I think, aren't they? Isn't it like 8?
Yeah, 8.5. Wouldn't you be throwing him like 5 innings a start, 80 pitches? And
yeah, they
to
could
get
start
him...
to coast because there's nobody in that division is catching them.
No.
Yeah, I'd start to take it a little easy on him.
Where'd you stand on the AL MVP thing? Do you think a pitcher
personally
can win?
I personally don't think the pitcher should win it.
How come?
I read your mailbag thing about it last week, and I mean, you make a compelling case because who was it? Lefty Grove won the first ever MVP.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get the point of how, what he does for the team and wins after losses and everything, but I don't know. I just think it should go to an everyday player.
Here, how about this though, Johnny? Verlander during the average season. A reader pointed this out. I thought it was a good point. A pitcher like Verlander basically has more quote unquote at bats than an everyday hitter.
Because he's there for the whole game, basically.
Yeah, he pitches.
Not just 5 at bats in a game. He's thrown 120 pitches or whatever.
Yeah, he faces maybe 35 batters a game, something like that. 30 to 35 batters a game, 30 starts. So he's like at around 900. I don't know the exact number. But a hitter will have 670 at-bats. Then I guess you could say a catcher is involved in every play or whatever. But the point is, even though he's not an everyday player, he is involved in a lot of plays. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
And you think I think DHs have won. Like, to me, a DH winning is more absurd than a pitcher.
Yeah, I agree. That would be ridiculous because only 5 at-bats a game and that's all they're doing. Unless the guy put up amazing numbers.
I like the email that somebody sent this week about, throw everything out and just ask yourself after the season has been played, if all the GMs in the league were having a draft and they knew what everybody, you say, all right, retroactively, you know what everybody is about to do in this season. Which guy would you take first to start your team with? I just think it would be Verlander. I don't think if Brian Cashman, they told him you could pick any player and start your team with him, and that's your 2011 season, and that's your first guy. I don't think they take Jose Bautista. They just don't.
No, and he's been terrible. If you look at his numbers in the second half, he's been lousy. I actually watched the other day. I think they were playing the Red Sox actually, and I turned on the game for a minute, and his numbers with runners in scoring position, he was hitting like 223 or something with 2 outs and runners in scoring position.
Yeah,
just not clutch at all.
He hasn't the case against him. I mean, I don't know if it's been lousy. He's definitely not
lousy.
Been as good
is a strong word,
second
I suppose,
half.
but
yeah,
he's come back to earth a little bit in the second half.
His runners in scoring position is the big thing. And after I wrote that column, people were emailing it to me, and it was like 226. He's hitting in runners in scoring position, which is one of those stats that it's pretty. Yeah, he's hitting 179 this month, Johnny.
Yeah.
261 last month. This month it's only 28 bats, but definitely in a little bit of a slump. I gotta say though, I like what Toronto is going. That team's scary. That team has some bats. That Brett Lowry's a monster.
I heard on the radio a couple weeks ago, I think it was after the baby was born, and I was home during the day, and I went out to run some errands, and I had the fan on, and there was some article, and I don't even remember where it was, Sporting News or something, and it was about how the new owners in Toronto have finally realized that they're the only professional baseball team in Canada, and they are going to now try to market themselves as like Canada's team.
Yeah.
And that there's however many people live in Canada that they want to get like all of Canada behind the Blue Jays, and that's why I think they're going to tweak their uniform so it's going to be red. It's going to look more like kind of like their flag or their Olympic colors. And they figure with this influx of Canadian money and having a TV contract that goes all over Canada that they can play with the Yankees and the Red Sox in terms of having a $120 million plus payroll.
Does Canada work like that?
I don't know. I think Canada just
sits
sits around waiting for like the Montreal Canadiens and the Maple Leafs to start training camp.
Because I know like they rally together for the Olympics and things like that, but I always thought there was like definitely little rivalries within Canada, like Montreal roots against Toronto.
Well, I think everybody roots against the province of Quebec.
Right.
And vice versa.
I'll have to have Jonah Carey on to figure this out. But I never thought it was as easy as it would be like in America. Like New York's not going to root for Boston, like things like that.
But like say America had some entry in a Canadian league. Like let's say the NHL was all Canadian teams, except for one team in New York. I mean, it's different with America because maybe we have a million different things going on. Maybe the analogy doesn't work. What's that?
No, I get it.
I'll believe it when I see it. I just thought it was an interesting scenario. I'll believe it when they really have a $150 million payroll and they go, sign Pujols for $30 million a year or something. Then I'll believe you're going to be like a player and you're going to be a big boy in the American League East. But otherwise, it's just words. But it's an interesting theory if it were to happen.
Well, why doesn't anybody go to their games? I was shocked by how few games. My friend, I had a friend who was there for the Toronto Film Festival, and on Tuesday, he on a whim just decided to go to the Sky Dome to see the Red Sox Blue Jays game because they had a 3-hour window. Just went, scalped tickets for less than price. Was like 5 rows behind home plate.
Yeah, I had a friend that did that last year for the Yankees. He went up and bought tickets, and even the face value, he was like 10 rows from the dugout or something for all 3 games against the Yankees. And Toronto's supposed to be like a very nice, fun city. Well, last night on Twitter, I made a joke about it because everybody's like, you're the only guy watching baseball, but I was watching the football game, obviously, and then I flipped over to the Red Sox for a minute to see what the score was. And I tuned in time to watch Dustin Pedroia strike out to end the game, which made me happy. And they were showing the game, and the crowd, there was like nobody there. So I made a joke about it on Twitter, and I got a lot of responses from Canadians, I guess, that follow me, who said that I guess people hate the stadium or the team's too far out of it, and nobody cares about the Blue Jays. So
people hate the stadium now?
Apparently,
they built it. They built it we were in college when they built that thing.
This was just one guy's thing on Twitter, but he said it's a big concrete bowl, and nobody likes to go there or something. I mean, it was the state of the art at the time because it had, the retractable roof. That was like one of the first ones, if not the first one, to have that. These stadiums go obsolete quicker than like a computer.
Make the case for or against Curtis Granderson as our AL MVP.
Well, the case for him is that he has 39 home runs. I think he's second in the league in home runs. He leads the league in. What's that?
Forget the stat stuff. Just as a guy who watches the Yankees every day, do you feel like he is the most valuable player in the team?
Well, I did for a long time, but I'm not sure anymore because Robbie Cano has come on. I mean, for a while, Granderson carried the team almost single-handedly. I mean, he just came through with big hit after big hit and just put the team on his back and was good for a home run or 2 and 5 RBIs a game, it seemed like, and scoring 3 runs. I mean, he was just on fire. He was everywhere. Single-handedly, he was always in the post-game interview with Kim Jones on Yes because he was always the hero, it seemed like, and he's been huge. So that was the case for him. The case against him is that Cano has come on really strong lately and has put up numbers that are close. I mean, he's not really close in home runs, but Cano has a higher batting average and his RBIs are close. And I guess the other case against Granderson is using all these new stats. They say he's a terrible defensive center fielder. Although I think he's okay. He seems to have good range for me, but based on user or laser or whatever it is, something claims that he's not a very good defensive player. So I think that's the case against them. You could probably make a case against them that the Yankees have a potent enough lineup that he's not, you can't really be the MVP when you have Teixeira, who's got 38 homers. You have Cano. You have Jeter, who's had a big second half. So there's a lot of guys. You can't say, well, he was such a difference maker for him.
It's really hard for me to think that either the Red Sox or the Yankees had an MVP. I mean, honestly, the MVP for each team is probably Rivera and Papelbon. If you're just looking at it from if you just removed one person from the team for the entire season, who would have had the biggest effect on the win-loss record?
Yeah.
For the Red Sox, then Bard would have been the closer, and it just would have been a hodgepodge of setup guys. It would have been a disaster.
Right.
And for the Yankees, you would have had. I just think those guys. Yeah, those two guys, the two closers, probably had the most value.
Yeah.
Not by that much, but just both teams are so deep and have so many good players. Like,
I mean, the Red Sox, you could make a case for Adrian Gonzalez, and you could make a case for Ellsbury. So it's like if you have both of those guys, then how can one guy be the MVP over the other? Really?
No,
Nobody stands out.
I would say I would put Ortiz on the same plane as Gonzalez.
Yeah, him too.
Gonzalez is interesting. My dad, 2 months ago, maybe even 2.5 months ago, started complaining about Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And this is when everybody was in on him, and he was the consensus MVP favorite. And he's like, my dad's not a sabermetric guy. He's not looking at the stats, but he watches every game.
Right.
And he was like, he called him an empty calorie guy. Just gets empty calorie stats.
Your dad was an outlier because now everybody's jumping off the Adrian Gonzalez
train. He was on it. He was the first guy on it, and he was like, "This guy's the new Movon. This guy's great. When it's 7-3 in the ninth inning, he's going to come up huge."
And, a couple of months ago, everybody thought he was Ted Williams, and now all that people do on the comments on the Boston Globe is complain about he doesn't have any clutch hits, and he never comes through in the clutch, and I guess empty calorie guy is a good way to put it.
Ever since he said that, I've been watching it pretty closely. And I think it's a little unfair, but there's definitely – I think him and Crawford are two guys that it seems like really smart teams can pitch to with a good pitcher. They attack them a certain way. Like in that Yankee game, he comes up bases loaded. Rivera just – first two pitches, throws it right in on his fist. Gets 2 strikes. And I knew he was going to do that. And then he does the thing where – you knew the sequence was going to end up with the low and outside fastball. I knew it was coming. He threw it. It probably wasn't a strike, but he got the call. But the whole sequence I had seen different teams do, and it just seems like – and then Crawford is just one of those guys. You get 2 strikes on him, then you just throw it anywhere. You throw it over the catcher's head, throw a grounder. He's going to swing.
He's the best. He's my favorite Red Sox. I love his contract so much. It's going to be an enjoyable 6 more years.
I would say, just from somebody who obviously isn't watching the Yankees every day, but it roots against them and is terrified when the Red Sox, gets terrified by different guys when the Red Sox play them. I think Cano is the best guy on the team. He's the guy I'm the most afraid of when he comes up. That should be part of the MVP thing. You should have the fans on the rival team should vote on who's they're most afraid of.
Yeah.
Every Red Sox fan is the most afraid of Robinson Cano. I guarantee it.
Yeah,
nobody's like, oh no, Curtis Granderson's up. He's scary.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another thing. I'm still afraid of Jeter.
As well you should be. My God, nobody has any Jeter jokes anymore. The guy's been the best player in baseball the second half of the year. Once he got those 3,000 hits behind him, and for the life of me, I can't really understand why there was so much pressure to get 3,000 hits. I mean, he was only whatever it was, however many away. It wasn't like he wasn't going to get it. So I don't understand. I mean, Girardi talked about it the other day in some press conference I saw where he's like, well, I guess I didn't quite understand how much pressure there was on him to get his 3,000th hit. I mean, I just don't get that. The guy's been in World Series games and huge playoff games, and to be that affected by 3,000 hits, but apparently it's true because he's been great the second half. He caught fire. He's put up huge numbers, and he dropped Minka Kelly. It's a guy with some confidence.
How many people have made the Roy Hobbs Kim Basinger analogy?
Yeah, probably about 1 million.
I mean, they broke up and he immediately started hitting.
I know.
It's clear she was killing him at home. She's killing him, Johnny. She's killing him at home. Comes home at 11:30. Minka's killing him.
I was shocked by that too because I always thought they were getting married. I mean, she was featured in the DJ 3K thing on HBO prominently, and she got a lot of FaceTime there, and there was all these marriage rumors, and then he dropped her.
That turned out to be her best acting performance of her career. Pretending to enjoy sitting with Derek's family as they're breaking up.
And I refuse to believe that it was an amicable breakup because there was a Seinfeld all about this. There's never been any such thing as an amicable breakup.
Right.
You can't tell me everybody's like, oh, that's good. Well, that was enjoyable, whatever it was, 3, 4, 5 years. See ya. Good luck with Charlie's Angels. Come on. She's got to be bitter, right?
I think she rode the Derek Jeter PR train for as far as it could go, and then it got her Charlie's Angels. She's like, all right, Derek, thanks. I'll see you later. I'm going to start making out with this guy in the cast now. Good luck.
You think that she and Bridget Moynihan are out in L.A. like having lunch together, talking to each other through it?
There's no question. I will say this. It is fun to have single Derek Jeter back.
Oh, yeah.
Opens up a whole array of possibilities.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see who he's linked to next.
He's been pretty good. Maybe it's just the internet era, but you look at Ortiz and how he was counted out by everybody, myself included, and how he's done the last year and a half, basically. And then you look at what Jeter's done the last 2 months, and You know, those guys, everybody threw dirt on him. It was done. It was over.
Right.
Jeter looked like an automatic out. I mean,
Yeah.
you would have bet anything he was done, right?
Yeah, it was looking that way. Like he was. I mean, I think there was an earlier podcast when I said we might have been in the Mickey Mantle playing first base portion of his career, but he's not. It's a resurgence.
All right,
hit every day, multiple hits.
Give me how worried you are for this week.
For the Yanks?
Yeah.
I'm not really very worried. I'd say moderate. I mean, it's getting to be late in the year. The playoffs are coming up. You always have a little consternation, I think, but nervous is too strong. I'm like a 2.5.
How much do you like this 2011 Yankees on a scale of 1 to 10? Doesn't seem like you like them that much this year. Is that a fair assessment?
No, it's not true. I like them. I mean, I love Jeter. Obviously, I love Granderson. I love Cano. I love Sabathia. I mean, they have guys I don't like. I dislike A.J. Burnett strongly. I mean, I'm not in love with Colon or Garcia. I mean, Garcia seems okay, and Colon is just kind of like he's like a human satire to me, a self-parody. That's what I was trying to think of. I mean, he's just like every time I watch him pitch, I'm like, God, it's Bartolo Colon pitching for the Yankees. I just can't believe it. It's like it just strikes me as so funny. And,
Teixeira, you don't like. You don't like Teixeira. You've been bitter.
I don't like Teixeira. I will admit that. I think Teixeira is an empty calorie guy too. I mean, could he get one hit against the Red Sox in his career? Yeah. Like before he retires, can I see Teixeira get one hit against the Red Sox? Has he ever had any kind of a clutch hit?
I feel like we can pitch to him.
And you know, the thing is, I don't really want to like Teixeira because he seems like a nice guy, but I think that may be the problem. Is he just seems like too nice of a guy, and I want a guy to be like a little. I hate to say this, but I wish that he was a little bit more like Pedroia, like a little dirt dog. Awful! I can't believe that. I wish he was a little more fiery and like a little.
I love it.
Getting the team revved up, and he just seems like he's he's going to go home to his wife and his 14 kids or whatever he has, and it's all good for Mark Teixeira. 0 for 5, whatever. Not that he doesn't want to win, but I just don't think isn't spit fire like I would wish.
On a scale, let me flip the "Are you worried?" around a little bit. Scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you of Mariano Rivera in the postseason?
No, I mean I don't think he's the Mariano Rivera of old who was like a machine or who just came in and got 3 outs. I mean, he's been a little adventurous this year. He puts some guys on base. He gives up more of the blue pits than he used to. Yeah. A few more walks than usual. So it's not automatic. Well, I mean, it ends up being a save, but it's not as clean as I would like it to be. Let's put it that way. But I don't really have any fear of him in the postseason.
Oh,
not a lot. No, he's Mariano Rivera.
Yeah, let's look.
He's got a gift from the Lord. He's the ageless one.
Let's see, any blown saves this year?
Yeah, I think he's got. He definitely blew one against the Red Sox.
Can't find the exact.
It was an early. It was. I think it was when my daughter was born. We were still in the hospital, and he blew one against the Red Sox, didn't he?
You talking about a save?
Yes.
And I can't find the blown saves. Yeah, the stats look the same as they always do, basically.
Yeah, he's a freak of nature.
He really is. I think, like 200 years from now, people are going to be studying baseball, trying to figure out what the F happened with Mariano.
He's a freak of nature, and moreover, not just that he's 42 years old and doing this, but that he does it with one pitch, and everybody knows that one pitch is coming, and you still can't hit it for the most part.
Oh, there's the blown saves.
He's got a couple.
Only have them for postseason. 3 blown saves in 2004. Well, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
It is crazy, though, that he's never had a bad year. I mean, the closest was like 07. He had the 3.15 ERA. The WHIP was 1.12, the highest of his career. Highest the last 14 years. But just year after year. Yeah,
he's. I actually am now nervous. I think I need to go to church or something because this could be a huge jinx. Talking about how wonderful he is and everything. This is not good. Slips on a mound in Anaheim tonight or something and rips his ACL. I'm going to blame myself. I need to go light a candle.
I think he could go on like this forever.
Nice try.
No, I'm dead serious. Dead serious. I just think this guy, what is he? He's 41 years old.
I think he's 42 now, but yeah, he's
42?
Yeah.
November 29th, 1969. God, he's younger than I am. That makes me want to kill myself.
You look younger, though. He's got the receding
Thanks.
hairline.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah. Appreciate that. Let's end on that note. Thank you, Johnny. Hold on. Give us just quickly 20 seconds on your prediction for the Republican candidate for the 2012 presidential election.
Well, oddly, it's already shaping up pretty early that I think it's going to be kind of like it was for the Democrats in 2008, where it was Hillary against Barack Obama pretty quickly. I notice I have to give his first name in case if I just said Obama, people didn't know which one I was talking about.
Smart.
When it came down to Hillary against Obama pretty quickly, I think the Republicans is coming down to Romney against Perry. It's going to be one of those two guys.
Romney against Perry.
Yeah, one of those guys is going to get the nomination. I think the Republicans' hearts are more with Perry, but they're probably a little worried because he's from Texas and it conjures up George Bush. So they're nervous about that, and he's a straight shooter, and, he's pretty blunt in calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme. So they're a little worried about how that would play with the electorate. So their head would go with Romney, but their heart is not really with him. Because Romney, kind of, more than kind of, shades his positions or is willing to switch as the prevailing winds change. So I think people know that and think that he's a little fishy. So I'm not sure but I think the Republicans want to win and they want to beat Obama. So, it's a battle of their heads versus their hearts, and it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out in the primaries. Everybody else is just an also-ran.
I feel like the Mormon thing is going to be a big deal, but on the other hand, I had a Mormon running my basketball team for the last 7 years, and we won an NBA title.
See? There you go.
So you have Perry as the odds-on favorite.
I would say right now, yeah. Although he's only been in one debate, and there's still time for him to stub his toe, but I would think that he's probably the favorite, yeah.
So if I said...
I will tell you regardless of who the nominee is, I'll tell you right now who the vice presidential candidate will be for the Republicans.
Who's that?
It's going to be Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida.
Oh.
There's not even a question. It's the most rock-solid lock ever.
Okay. So if I said, if Rick Perry wins the presidential election, I'll give you $100. But if Mitt Romney wins the Republican nomination, you give me $175. Would you take that bet?
If Perry wins, I get $100, and if Romney wins, you get $175.
Yeah. I'm not offering the bet. I'm just wondering if you would take it.
Yeah, I'm not going to come knocking your door next July looking for $100. Yeah, I would probably take that bet.
Oh, so you basically have Perry as a 2-to-1 favorite.
I would say so, yes. Yes, I think so. Unless something, you can always hedge your bets and say, well, if somebody, like in sports, well, if somebody gets hurt. But, yeah, I would say that Perry is probably the odds-on favorite.
All right, we'll check back.
And Rubio's a rock-solid lock. You can take that to Vegas. If you're allowed to bet on the vice presidential candidate, he's off the board. It's such a solid. He's 1-5.
All right. Well, thank you for reining it in for this 3-minute political discussion without antagonizing our listeners. People get mad. They don't want to hear about politics.
I know. I'm going to get a million angry tweets now about what an idiot I am and what an idiot Perry is, and I should stick to baseball and yada yada.
All right.
Save your 140 characters, people. I get it.
Johnny, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Hey, one last thing. I made an appearance on the Grantland Network's reality podcast hosted by the czar, Dave Jacoby, the first one we called Johnny Bananas from The Real World and The Challenge, and we talked reality stuff. You can check that out on the Grantland Network on iTunes or ESPN.com's Pod Center. Please subscribe. Thank you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.